her to at least remediate the effect of his actions. So sometimes we require an apology, you get them to apologize to the victims. Will it require treatment? You get them to pay for it. Will it require that some things are restored, maybe things that were lost in the process, you get them to do it. So you're helping the person. The person doesn't really go back to the original state, but you're restoring them at least to a level where they are comfortable to put that sad experience behind them. That is what restorative justice does. Next slide. We're supposed to have a role play, but like I said, because we're running a tight leash, we'll come back to it. So please move on. Next slide, please. Yes, communication principles. This is the third module. Remember, we are talking about family dispute. I hope you have not forgotten. So most of the things we'll be talking about are things that you do them unconsciously, except that you've not probably been taking note. And today, it's been brought to your attention formally. For the most part, disputes can be avoided by how we talk. Is that correct? Do you think so? Who said yes? Yeah, you said yes. I want to know why you think so. Thank you. So why do you think we can avoid disputes or conflict by how we talk, how we communicate?
As humans, we have emotions.
Sorry? Can you turn the mic on?
As humans, we have emotions. I said, as humans, we have emotions.
Yes. So, what we say can affect the emotions. I agree. Do you agree? You agree? What do you agree with? That's correct. The way I talk to you can make you either happy, sad, or angry. Is that correct? Yes. It's the same thing in conflict settings. So, as a mediator, or as somebody who has been called upon to resolve disputes, professionally or otherwise, what is one of the first things you want to look out for? You want to look out for how the parties communicate, how they talk. If you've ever been in a situation where two people are quarreling, you probably notice that both of them want to have the harshest words for each other. Is that not correct? This one wants to be, at the end of the day, if you speak Yoruba, say, how many of you understand Yoruba here? Please raise your hands, let me see. So you understand what I'm saying? Is that not so? And the other person wants to revenge. So if he cannot revenge with his or her own words, he can revenge with actions. Okay, you know how to insult, don't worry. The insult will buy you food now. Abi? So you want to look out for how they talk to each other. That's your first and most important role as a mediator or as a conflict resolution specialist, or by whatever name you want to be identified. And what are some of the principles that you can help them to develop? Please, the slide. Mutual constructive communication. What does it mean? You know what the term mutual means? It means you're looking out not just for your interest, but that of the other person. So somebody can say, it's in our mutual interest to do this. What it simply means is that it will benefit you and I. So if you notice that communication is a problem between two parties to a conflict, it is important to help you, for you to help them to develop that technique of talking, where either side focuses on the other person. So you listen to two parties who are quarreling, and the first party is talking about how he or she felt. And throughout the gamut of that conversation, she or he will not mention how the other person was impacted. Have you been in that situation before? Where somebody is telling you what my friend did to me, I was so angry. She made me so angry. I felt deflated. I felt this. She made me look like this. She made me look like that. She doesn't have respect for me. Everything is about what? Self. That person doesn't stop to think for once how he or she has acted in a way that negatively affected the other side. And so both sides have built a wall. Everybody is focusing on their needs, their interests, their concerns. But if you now help them to make a shift, and how do you help them? It's by helping them to understand that in that conflict, it is not just their interest that matters. The interest of the other side also matters. So, what have you been doing? What have you been saying that is fueling the fire? It is only when that person realizes it that they can now shift to think of the need of their partner. And that is what mutual constructive communication is about. Helping the person to focus on the need of the other side. And so they can now understand, okay, so when I say this, I might think I am joking, but my wife is really not happy about it. Oh, okay, so my husband is really never happy about it. My friend is really not happy about it. I didn't know this is how it affected you. I wouldn't have done it. I am sorry. And I'm sorry is one of the most difficult things to say. Do you agree? You think so? Yeah, it is. Now, again, for parties to a conflict who have children, it is important to help them not to expose their children to that conflict situation. So you're not only helping them to build on developing interest in the needs of the other side, you're also helping them to focus on not exposing their children to the conflict. In some of the sessions we've had, when we ask this question, how is this possible? We've got very interesting feedbacks. And I would like to also share your views. Do you think it is possible not to expose children to conflict? Okay, so I have my first response, no. Who else think it is possible or is not possible? You think it is possible? Okay, so let's start. Can you give her the mic?
I think that it's not possible because I think kids are way smarter, and I believe that kids notice when things are off. Like, a young child could come to you and see you and be like, "Oh, are you sad?" or something like that. Sorry. Kids are very aware of people's emotions, and they're also really kind and caring. So I think when an issue happens, and let's say you lock the door or something, and the kids don't hear it, and mommy comes or daddy comes, daddy's angry, mommy is a bit sad, and kids are like, "Oh, mommy, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I feel like as they age, like they're just like, "Oh, this was kind of off." Like, if as long as they can remember, unless they're really small, but as long as they can remember, they're like, "No, there was a time mommy usually had this little, she was a bit sad, or she would just go here, and daddy wasn't really talking as much." So I feel kids can sense a lot of energy, and even if you, yes, thank you.
Um, I believe it's possible to not expose children to conflict, especially if the parents decide, both parties decide that, okay, we can have the discussion in the bedroom, the door closed, we don't need to raise our voices. We can and we behave normally around the children, because such conflicts do affect the children when they raise their voices. Their mood is affected by what they see from their parents. So if the parents do take an active effort to make sure the children don't see them in conflict, the children can be unaware.
Another interesting perspective. Please give her a round of applause too. The beauty of it is that I agree with both of them. So let me start with why I agree with her. So yes, if you're angry, you probably wear a frown. probably are not talking, you're not as chatty as you used to be. The child comes around, and look, this is not the time for it. You can snap. So the child is like, that is off, or mommy is off. Stuff like that can happen. However, they are not able to tell what is going on. So if both parties agree, okay, we don't even need to do it in the house. So some of the responses we got is also a man and a woman living in face me and face you. How do you expect them to talk and for their children not to hear? In fact, those are some of. So I was hoping that we would hear similar responses here. But you're providing us other interesting perspectives. And so some people will say, no, the man and woman lives in just 2 rooms with 3 children, and you expect the children not to hear them when they are quarreling. It's not possible. But like she said, if you agree, so if you notice that it is not possible to do it in the house, can you do it outside? Can you take a walk? It's possible. So both of you have problems, and you need to resolve that problem. You don't want your children to know that there are problems. So okay, don't worry, let's take a walk. We'll discuss our problem. It's one of the advantages of taking a walk is that you cannot shout at each other on the main road. Can you? You can. Okay. So it must be a really serious problem for you to scream at each other on the road. Otherwise, you won't shout at each other because you both agreed to resolve the problem. Not so. And then you are aware of your environment. People will know we are fighting. We don't want them to know we are fighting. Is that not so? And so you talk and you walk for as long as. One of the advantages of walking is that it helps you to calm down. Yes, it helps you to calm down. So if it is not possible to talk in the house, take a. Thank you. So the other person who also says it is not possible because children will notice. Yes, you're correct. They will notice that something is off, but they don't know what is off. And if you do not tell them, they won't know. And you're teaching them a valuable lesson. They will grow up and understand in the long run, okay, so our parents used to settle their problems and we didn't know about it. So those times that the situation was a bit off, they actually had a problem they didn't want us to know about. So what do they take into their own homes? I should settle my problems without my children knowing it. That's why it is important. Please, let's move on to the next slide. Property and housing arrangement. So you see the way we are coming, we are progressing. It's like a graduation. You start with responsibilities, and then you realize that this can degenerate into conflict. And one of the ways to diffuse conflict is how we talk. But what if you are introduced to the conflict at that point when parties have gone beyond all of this? In fact, they've gone to the point where they are both separated or want to separate. And that is when you become aware of the problem. And you've done your bit, you've tried to resolve, you've tried to teach them communication techniques, you've reminded them of their obligations. In fact, you've advised one party to involve the law enforcement, and it is not working. And then also, okay, we need to make arrangements about housing and property. What are the recommendations that you can use? First, get parties to agree on housing arrangements. The most important word that I want you to take note of here is this is often achieved through distributive decision making. Practitioners must ensure that parents follow going rates. What is going rate? Who can explain what going rate means? For us, please. Who can explain what going rate means? You want to try? Please.
So I can explain this going rate like the way they come out of the house and how long they spend outside of the house.
Thank you. Going rate is actually an economic term. So I was expecting an economic student to help us understand. But for the sake of our time, going rate simply means how much it is in the market. Do we get that? How much is it? Now let me use a live experience to illustrate it. The husband and wife had problems. The woman went with the child. She had custody of the child. And then she demanded school fees. At the time, this is a long time ago, she asked her husband for 500,000 per term for school fees. And the man refused to pay. And when they asked him why he refused to pay, he said because the woman is trying to fleece him. And they said, why? Why do you think so? Because I know that is not how much they pay in the school. And then the woman came up in defense of herself and said, no, I want my child to have the best form of education. So I'm putting her in this school. I want this environment and that environment. And the man said, it's a lie. I will not pay. So how was it resolved? They now looked around at schools in a reasonable category. How much do those schools charge? And truly it was discovered that it was not up to 500,000. So the woman first had to come down from her high horse, as it were. So, okay, but this is not the going rate now. This is not reflective of how much schools in this category pay. You're making it difficult for your husband to contribute. So it is important for practitioners when you face dispute situations and you are helping parties to navigate that process of making arrangements. You don't want to indulge people's unreasonable preferences. Because the truth is, parties to a dispute can become unreasonable. Do you think so? Do you agree? Yes. So, especially when both sides or one of the parties to dispute has money, don't worry, I'll show you Pepe. And how do you show people Pepe when it comes to money? By taking their money. Is that not so? You take their money now. So don't worry, I'll show you Pepe. As a practitioner, don't let it happen. Because if you let it happen, you're not likely to resolve that problem. So get parties to be balanced. They know what is required. Let them stick to it. Their personal preferences should not interfere. So that's the idea behind, or the explanation, the idea behind the principle of going rates. Don't indulge them in making demands that are not reasonable. On the other hand, too, it might be the other side of the dispute that is saying, no, I won't pay you more than 20,000, when in fact 20,000 cannot work. And you find that the person is able to pay more than 20K, but he's just being unreasonable. You need to bring it to their attention that their personal preferences should not interfere with that decision-making process. Now, the next one is to recommend alternative housing. So, the ideal situation is when parties to a dispute can afford to separate. But is it in all cases that parties to a dispute can afford to separate? I want to get your opinion on this. Is it in all cases? Do you think it's in all cases? Tell me, please.
No.
Okay.
Why it is not in all cases that parties to the dispute can afford to separate is because in a lot of marriages or in a lot of relationships, most time the women don't. This is not reflective of anything, but like in the current situation of Nigeria and the current doctrine people have, most women do not have their own money or do not have as much money to kind of separate from their husbands. They are joined together, even in terrible situations. So when it's a situation of separation required, they don't necessarily have the funding. And there are also cases where people don't have alternatives like family members or friends they can stay with because their whole life is tied to their family.
It's very correct. Please give him a round of applause. So have you been in a situation before where the woman or the man says, if I had the money to rent my own house, I would have left a long time ago? Have you had it before? So it is not in every situation that it is possible for somebody to make their own arrangement for housing. So we're talking about going rates only when parties can afford it. What of when parties cannot afford it? In fact, what the last speaker has said is to help us also see something that in some situations, in fact, this second recommendation says advise alternative housing. So for instance, children are involved. The man doesn't have the money to rent his own apartment and leave the home, or rent an apartment for his wife and children. And you now encourage him, for example, do you have a friend you can stay with? I mean, it's just a transition period. You can resolve this problem one way or the other. But until then, do you have a friend you can stay with for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, for as long as possible? And he says, well, I'm even tired. Let me go and talk to some of my friends. And the friend says, okay, well, I can house you for maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks maximum. Anything can happen in 2 weeks. But you've recommended alternative housing. Or do you have a family member? So there are certain situations where the woman can go back to to her parents' house. The man can leave the home and move to his own parents' house or his siblings' house. And situations like that. Advise them to think of those situations. So you are not able to rent a house, but you have somebody you can live with. Please live with them in the meantime. I mean, living apart sometimes helps people to think clearly, and they remember, well, this is not so much a problem. And they can decide at the end of the day to resolve their dispute and come back to live together again. Is it not possible? Is it not possible? It is. So recommend alternative housing. Next slide, please. Now, children, including their upbringing and education. Everything we've been talking about revolves around obligations, revolve around communication, also revolve around children. So when you recommend alternative housing, the person you're most likely thinking about is the child. You want it to be comfortable for them. So in the same vein, disputes or conflict should not stop a child's life. So sometimes a man is angry with his wife or a woman is angry with her husband and she decides to leave home and she leaves the children. She doesn't care about their education, whereas she's the one who was providing for the family. Have you come across situations like that, or at least heard of situations like that, where it is the woman that is actually earning the most? And if the woman decides, I'm no longer interested, what do you think happened to the children in that relationship? They will suffer. Not so. It is important to also help them to understand that their obligation does not come to an end simply because they have conflict, especially towards their children. So what are the recommendations? It says when parents are facing a family conflict, they should always think about the best interests of their children. And so they should always put into consideration how that conflict. We explained it in one of the modules earlier, that it should not, parties to a conflict, parents should not expose their children to conflict. So they should constantly think about how their situation affects their children, because it is important to do so. And then they should also be sure or ensure that the information they share with their children is appropriate. It is not only appropriate but also constructive. I'll give you an example. A woman is angry with her husband and she calls the children and said, look, your father, I'm tired of your father. He doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. He's all constantly berating me. What do you think that woman is doing to the children? You want to tell me?
So, for a woman that constantly does that, berating or degrading the husband, is trying to mess with their mentality because that's how they'll see their father that is not a man that can do anything.
Do you agree with her? Please give her a round of applause. Would you call that kind of information that that woman is sharing, would you call it appropriate for the children? Do you think it is appropriate? No, it is not. It is not appropriate, neither is it constructive. Because you're simply getting the children to dislike one parent. It can be the other way. Say if you had a reasonable mother, if you had a responsible mother, this will not happen, that will not happen. And so the children look at their mom as somebody who is irresponsible. What you're basically doing is getting those children to take sides. And it is not proper. Because remember, like one of us said, you're not only trying to solve your problem, you are also ingraining in their minds what they will grow up with. So, it is important to teach or encourage parties to a conflict to be careful the kind of information that they pass across to their children in conflict settings. The next slide. And so, it is also important at that situation or in that situation to be careful the kind of parenting style that you practice. And in my limited understanding, I know of three: authoritative, authoritarian, and there's the negligent. So the first is, yes, permissive, sorry. Permissive. What is authoritative parenting? Do we have any psychology student here? Is there any? Okay, so can we get someone to explain what authoritative parenting is? Don't be shy. Tell us what you know. You're not wrong. Nobody wants to try. Okay, so let's explain it this way. Have you ever asked your dad or your mom for something and they told you no, and then provided a reason why they can't give it to you at that time, at that point in time? Has this happened to you before? It has happened to you. I'm not hearing voices. Thank you. So, what did you ask for? No. To go out with your friends, and you were denied the permission to go out. Was it mommy you asked? Okay, your mommy said yes. Daddy said no. And did daddy tell you why? But it's not all the time that daddy says no, is it? Is it all the time that daddy says no when you ask for something? Not really. So there are times you get what you want, there are other times you don't get what you want. So there are certain situations where they are firm with you. They notice that you're probably going to mess up and they are firm with you. They correct you. But most of the time, you get the love and the attention that you require from them. That's authoritative parenting. They don't let you go wayward. They are not too strict. They manage things well with you. That is what authoritative parenting is. Now, the other extreme, so we now have this in between. Now we now have two extremes on both the left and the right. The first extreme is authoritarian. No, all the time. No explanations. It's just a sort of command and obey situation. Do it, don't do it. Sit down, get up, more like a military setting. You want to share something? Okay, we'll come back to you. But you understand what I'm saying, don't you? So you find certain situations where all the time the parents are only dishing out commands. The child doesn't talk because he or she cannot talk. That's authoritarian. There's no freedom whatsoever. Then you now have on the other end of the extreme, permissive parenting. The child is basically on their own. Whether she makes good friends or not. Whether he's lonely or not. Sorry? We want to hear you.
I thought that is uninvolved parenting style. Yeah. But the permissive one is, oh, they show you that, okay, do you want this? They pamper you a lot. That is the permissive one.
Okay, so you're telling us that what I just explained is not permissive, but uninvolved parenting. So please take note that we now have another kind of parenting called uninvolved parenting. Thank you so much. So essentially, what we are talking about when we talk about permissive, it could also involve situations where parents don't really give attention. The child is basically on their own. Some practitioners have given us explanations to the effect that some parents feel, well, my child is in school, he's eating, he has clothes, he has money to spend. That's all my obligation. Whether the child develops a good moral code or not, none of their business. They are free to do what they want to do. Do you think it is proper? Do you think that's the kind of parenting? Would you want to be that kind of parent? Let's hear. No. Why? Why?
So basically, let's go into the biblical aspects. Guide the child because we are also children of God. That's the parents. And if you are a strong Christian, God guides you. So in that same way, you don't just leave your child to go anywhere because you might say, oh, I don't care. But eventually something happens to that child. You'll be the first point of contact to affect. And at the end of the whole day, if God asks you, where is the child I gave to you? What will you say?
Thank you. Round of applause for her, please. So she's basically telling us you have an obligation, a duty towards God. You're going to render an account. But so what if the person is not a Christian? What if the person is not a Muslim? What if the person does not even believe in the existence of God? Does it mean that they don't have obligations? Does it mean that they can leave their children to just go astray? No. So, yes, there's a higher cost, there's a higher reason why we do it. But beyond that, it is not proper not to guide children. So you agree that authoritative, where you give children a measure of freedom, guided freedom, responsible freedom. You are involved in their lives, they have access to you, you can guide them through life, and you're firm with them when you need to be. That's the kind of parenting we want to encourage. So you don't know where you find yourself later. You can become, like we said from the beginning, you can decide to pick an interest in alternative dispute resolution practice. You can become a counselor. You can even be your partial recommendations. Next slide. The next one, please. Maintenance and income. So it's the same. It's similar to property and housing arrangements. When parents or parties to a conflict are separated, does that mean that tell us now? You said yes. Okay. So why yes?
My question is like, first of all, like, do you mean separation like divorce or like separation for the meantime? Like the obligations are only meant to be for the children, not for the spouse. Okay, so I'm not 100% sure, but there's this thing that happens when a man marries a woman or a woman marries a man or something, and somehow one is richer, so they introduce one to a certain level, like a certain standard of living. So when they pay or whatever, and they want to pay like alimony or payments, yeah, even if I met my husband like at a place like lower than me, when he marries me and like since I'm so rich, they often like argue for the same amount of money that keeps them living with that same standard. So you can't like just say, okay, I married a billionaire and I picked you up from like the slums or something, and now that we're separated, you go back to your slum. Like there's often like women often like no, not women, but like any party basically, they often demand that they still get the same money that keeps them on that standard of living, like the same or similar. You can't just like drop them right back because you guys have separated. So yeah.
Do you have another opinion? Maoga wants to say something.
No, no, I'm agreeing with her. I say it's common in the global north, not necessarily in Nigeria.
Or the global south. So, the first person that said when you separate, your obligations are no longer towards the parties but to the children probably has seen things from a societal perspective. That's what the society says. And that is what you see in practice. Once you're separated, that's the end. So if a man is giving his wife money, he is not giving the wife money for herself, but because of the children. Or if it is the other way around, it is possible that the man was left with the children and the woman sends money to her children. Because he feels that the obligations to each other have come to an end. But like the second person said, are you a law student? What are you studying? Medicine. Good. So what she described is called alimony in law. You watch a lot of movies. There's this Tyler Perry movie. What's the name now? How many of you watched it? Sorry? Acrimony. So you watch movies like that and you see them argue a lot in court. Settlement, $2 million. That's what I need. Well, in truth, it is actually possible in Nigeria too. Except that cases of enforcement are very, very low. That's the difference. But it happens in Nigeria too, where we don't call it alimony. That again is the difference. And that is why we use the language maintenance and income. So in Nigeria, you can actually ask for maintenance, even when you are divorced. How many of you knew this before? Please raise your hands. Let me see. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Are you a law student? 4. A good number. Yeah. So you can actually ask for maintenance. If the man doesn't or the woman doesn't agree, and again, it is not only a woman that is entitled to maintenance. A man is also entitled to maintenance. So if it is the woman that is earning more, a man can go to court and say, my wife was earning 1 million when we were together. I was earning 100,000. And my lifestyle was worth 400,000. Until I am able to find a job that gives me 400K. Tell my wife to give me the balance of 300,000. Some people are laughing. Don't be shy. I'm not your lecturer, am I? Okay, you want to say something? I'm interested in what you want to say. I have a question. Please go ahead and ask.
Okay, so my question is, what determines who is getting the maintenance? Is it like the man would get the maintenance if it's the woman that asked for the separation, the woman would get the maintenance if the man asked for separation, or is just this person is earning more than me, so I want like maintenance?
Very important question. Now, the person who asks for maintenance is the person who is not able to maintain themselves. Do you understand that answer? The person who is not able to maintain themselves. So, for instance, you have, let's do some social media now. Rich, Oga wife. Is that how they call it? So I don't want to do. I just want to. Sorry. Go ahead. Tell us, please. Regina Daniel. Okay. No, but Regina Daniel is an actress. She's not just a rich Oga wife. She's an actress. She makes her own money. Full housewife. Thank you. So yes, it can happen. So some, especially in our environment, some men will say, "I don't want you to work. I don't want you to do anything. In fact, I'll place you on a salary for being a full-time mom." And so the woman was taking maybe 1.5 million or 500,000 a month as a full-time wife. And then suddenly there's a problem. Both of them are separated. She never had a job. She cannot earn money. But she was enjoying 1.5 billion a month. And the man now says, "No, I can't give you money again." She's entitled to go to court and say, "You put me in this situation in the first place. I could have walked. So until I'm able to find something, give me maintenance." But that is if the man can afford it. So what it means is that you don't go to court to ask for 10 million when all your husband or ex-husband or ex-wife can afford is 250K. The court will not give you. Jonathan did not tell you the court will give you 10 million. No. The court will look at the person's pocket. What can he afford? That's the idea behind maintenance. I don't know if we get it. Do we understand it? So the fact that you are separated does not mean that the person you used to live with is no longer entitled to be alive, to survive. So until they are able to find their feet, you still owe them that obligation. So even if they didn't have children together, and of course if they have children together, you know that your obligation continues until those children attain adulthood. Now that you have this knowledge, if you didn't know before, now you know. Not so. Let's say you walk out of here to somewhere and you find yourself in this situation where both parties are quarreling over maintenance. What would you do? You'll advise them accordingly. Not so. That's the idea. That's the idea of this training. So you will not say, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. You know, at least vaguely, that the law places an obligation on both parties in that situation to still take care of themselves. And if it now becomes too complex, you refer to the guidelines, and if it is becoming more of a legal issue, you can refer them to lawyers. Do you get it? Next slide, please. So we encourage two recommendations. The first, we have discussed the second, alimony. That is what we just talked about. The first one we should have talked about is economic marital transition. We've also explained it. So until the other partner is able to find their feet, you keep taking care of them. But now let's bring it home. We've spoken a lot of English. Let's bring it home. Is this possible in Nigeria? Let's share your opinion. Do you think this can work in Nigeria? Providing money for somebody you're no longer living with. Do you think it's something that can work in Nigeria? Let me start here.
It's possible, but then the social class difference and all of that might not make it visible. And yeah, because someone has power than the other, so there's ground for oppression and all of that. So
interesting perspective. Did you hear her? Did you hear him? So he's basically saying that the social system might make it impossible to enforce. And I agree. Because most times we tend to see things from that perspective. That's what society imposes. If you're no longer living together, you owe no obligation. So there's even very low level of awareness as to these obligations. However, the law says it is possible. And so one of the benefits of this training is that you know and you can advise. You can create awareness. Do you understand? You have a question?
So thank you, sir. It's not really like a question, but it's like, what happens to someone who knows he or she is earning lower than his spouse or her spouse, but files for a divorce and then still wants maintenance? Like, think of that. Okay, I know you earn 100 million right now, and then you already like, for instance, you earn 100 million, and then I want you to place me on the maintenance of 10 million, right? Okay, yeah, promise. You do that. Is there also a time limit that is set for me to find a job before that maintenance stops? Because I feel it does not make sense to be making a kill out of someone else's hard-earned money.
Thank you so much. Very interesting question you have asked. Yes, the law does not leave it indefinite. So if you're asking for maintenance, it is for you to be able to find your feet. Or if the other party agrees indefinitely. So somebody is earning, like you said, 100 million a month. Take 10 million out of 100 million, the person still has 90 million. And if he continues to earn that much, he probably doesn't mind that he gives 10 million to his ex-wife or to her ex-husband indefinitely. So don't worry, I know. She likes money, he likes money. I don't mind. I don't want them to even bother me. They might say so. But essentially, it's about what works. Okay, so give me 10 million in the next 6 months. In the next 1 year, I'll find a job or I'll start a business. It will start earning profits and I'll leave you alone. Do you understand? So it depends on the circumstance. Okay, so we'll soon start collecting your
Okay, so what if the court gives a certain period of time, let's say 6 months, and after the 6 months you're not able to get your feet? Would you still be granted more?
It's possible. You go back to court to ask for an extension. And let's not lose focus. We're not dealing essentially with court. You can help parties do this. That's the essence of being a mediator. So they can sit down. In fact, it's easier to do it in your office or with you than with the court. You know why? In court, they will fight. They won't talk. They won't see eye to eye. They are fighting. Everybody's pushing their own narrative. But when they are before a mediator, they are still able to talk. They might be fighting, but occasionally they will mention some positive things about each other that can motivate the other side to say, well, she's a bad person now, but I used to enjoy sometimes with her, so I don't mind. You know, things like that can happen. So if you say 6 months in the first instance, and after 6 months the person is still not able to find their feet, you can come back to you and say, please, can you call my husband or can you call my wife? I have this situation. They see, they know it is true, and then you can work out something. Who's the next person? Okay, please.
Thank you. My question is as regards the alimony. Does it also matter or does it also take place when a prenup was signed before they got married?
Prenuptial agreements. First, prenuptial agreements are not common in Nigeria. They happen outside of Nigeria. I'm not saying it is not done. Actually, some people do it, even in the country. Now, when you sign prenuptial agreements before you marry, you are expected to stick to it. And so if you signed away all your rights in that stage because you were madly in love, as they say it will be difficult for you to come back and, I didn't say impossible, but difficult. Do you understand? So there are certain situations that can invalidate an agreement. So you can say you were misled. If truly there are circumstances that show that you were misled into signing, maybe you were forced. If those circumstances exist, you can go and argue it. They misled me into signing a prenuptial agreement that I would not have signed if I was aware of X, Y, Z. Again, the essence of alimony or maintenance is not necessarily about what agreement you signed. Right? It's about keeping the other person alive, giving them a chance to survive. And the essence of ADR is that you are helping, so both of you are still talking. It is alternative dispute resolution. They are listening, you're talking. So you can get them to vary. Say, well, I know we signed an agreement, but come to think of it. If you were in her shoes, if you were in his shoes, you reach their heart and they listen and it's okay, I'm willing to. But as a last option, they go to court, the court will look at the circumstance of the situation. You too, think of it now. This person is left with nothing. The justice of the situation. You remember we were talking about justice. Is it just to leave this person in this situation? The court has what we call discretion to look at an agreement and determine whether it is valid or not. And if in the circumstance the agreement is not enforceable, the court will say so. Okay? This will be the last question for this session.
Okay, I just want to confirm if
I hope you are not planning to go and advise somebody.
I just want to confirm if there are things that cancel out this alimony. For example, if I'm married to someone and then I'm earning way more than him, but then he's like abusive. So the reason we're separating is domestic abuse. Yeah. Am I still expected to, like, if he should come to ask, like, am I still expected to pay maintenance, or I can decide not to?
This is a very tricky question. Do you know why it is tricky? Because it's borderline between emotion and justice, right? Somebody is abusive. That is why you're leaving. And then after you leave, you are expected to still give that person money. No, it's unjust. You feel like that? That's how you feel. I know. I know. However, the idea is to also ask, is it just to let the other person just die? Oh, so he can go to hell. So you see, balance is required. Remember the idea of maintenance. So now when we talk of maintenance or alimony as we call it, you're separated, it might not be divorce. So sometimes you go to court to get judicial separation. So look, tell him not to come to the house again because I'm tired of the beating. I'm not divorced though, I am still Mrs. AYA. But let him stay away. So divorced, yes. But post-divorce, this person was abusive, probably because he was at home doing nothing. He depended on your money. And so he didn't have a good sense of responsibility, so he thought he could misbehave. When you leave that person, the first thing that will hit them is the fact that they no longer have access to your finances. Right? It might help them, not necessarily for you, but for the next person. Okay, it is because I was jobless that I was not able to think. I was idle. If I was working, I would probably behave properly. It can happen. I'm not saying that is all. I'm not a pastor, really. So let's not dwell into that realm. Right? But the time it takes for them to get another job, do they have the right to leave? Do they have the right to survive? Those are the circumstances a mediator will look at. So you might not be giving them, and besides, you're not doing it forever. So if the person is asking for 1 million and you can only afford 200, I'm giving 200 for 6 months. And after 6 months, I'm done. So the person knows they have to leave and go and look for something to do because they know they're not coming back. Do you understand? Thank you. Next slide. Well, we've talked about spousal maintenance. That's what we've been talking about all day, especially with your questions. And your questions have proved very helpful. So let's move on. Separation processes. How do you help parties to separate? One of the issues that will come up with regards to separation is what we just discussed, maintenance. That's the first issue you want them to resolve. How do they live and sustain themselves financially? The others that we'll talk about is, please, the next slide. To apply a problem-solving approach in the separation process. What does it mean? It means that you're helping parties to agree and find solutions to underlying needs and objectives. So think of all the things we've discussed in the past 1 hour or so. Providing for children, finding alternative arrangements, housing arrangements, dealing with violence, and all the other issues we've talked about. They will all come into play in the separation process. How do they continue to pay children's school fees? How do they continue to train their children? How do they continue to perform their obligation as parents in terms of parenting? How do they maintain themselves? All of these are issues that will come up in the separation processes, one after the other. As a mediator, your target is a problem-solving approach. Remember, they already have conflict. In fact, the conflict is so bad that they have now come to a point where the only viable option is separation. And they have to resolve these issues in the course of separation. So you help them to think of themselves as partners. It can be difficult. But is it impossible? It is possible. The partnership is not for them to come back if they don't want to. But how do they make the separation as smooth as possible? And you know, this is one information you guys might want to have. Even in court, it happens. So sometimes people think that you go to court only to fight. They can come to you, agree on how to separate. This is how much I'll pay for school fees. This is how much I'll pay for house rent. This is how much I'll pay for this. This is how many times I'll visit. This is how long the children will spend with her or with me. They can agree on all of those and put it in writing. And so when they go to court, the only thing they talk about is the separation itself, divorce. So how do you plan to take care of children? We have already put all of those in writing. We've already agreed. We went to a mediator who walked us through the process. We have an agreement. The agreement is in writing. Here it is. The court will accept it and rule according to the content of that agreement. But if you do not have a problem-solving approach in mind when you help them through, your likelihood of success will be slim. Remember, parties to a conflict are focusing mostly on the problem and themselves. So, under communication principles, we talked about mutual constructive communication. You help them to focus on each other's needs. So that way, they can walk through the process. You are guiding them through, helping them to navigate it in the best possible manner. And so if as a mediator you don't even know how to do so, will it be possible for you to help the parties before you? No. So you need to improve your ability to help parties communicate effectively. Next slide, please. Okay, that's the last slide. Yes. So this is where we come to an end in the family guidelines. Thank you so much for listening. So the therapeutic approach is essentially the same thing about problem solving. You know what therapy is? We talked about group therapy before. Helping parties to heal, suit them. Can we take a few questions before we dive straight into the role play? Do you have more questions? Please, your question.
All I wanted to ask was when someone is providing support to either their spouse or to their children, do they review that financial support for inflation? Like, if they were paying you 1 million last year, 1 million this year, are they like, oh, fuel is this, everything has increased, so I'm going to need a bit more?
Simple answer is yes. It's not static. So at every point in time, it depends on the situation. But you'll always have to go back to your mediator. You know, the reason they come to you in the first place is because they are not able to resolve these things themselves. That also. So when it happens, they come back to you. And then you invite the other side, get them to see why that arrangement has to be reviewed. Next question.
In families where they don't share, like they don't combine their income, like my salary is mine, yours is yours, and one of them may have like a lower share, not share, like their income may be lower than the other one. So when they separate, that means they're on their own. Like if they separate, there's no okay, I'll give you this until you have this, or I'll be giving you this amount of money until you get back on your feet. They don't do that.
So if you earn your salary and I earn my salary, so how were we living before we had problems? It is possible that we would contribute. So you probably pay for house rent. I probably pay for house rent while you pay for light bill. Or maybe I used to buy food in the house while you pay for home run or school run. That's how we shared the responsibilities. Now when there's separation, you review. Using all of the methods that we have discussed here, you review. Now when you review, you look at the circumstance and apply the going rate.
Thank you, sir. So, in the aspect of separation, like, how do you like advise someone experiencing domestic violence, like, put aside their religious beliefs and societal judgments, go ahead with separation? Like, let's say they've tried counseling, all those stuff, and it doesn't work, and like, the woman is like, oh, due to the societal belief and her religious belief, she can't go ahead.
Okay, so how do they rise above societal impediments? So this society is probably one that is religious in nature. Am I correct? And that religion is saying no, under no circumstance should you divorce. If you're a Christian, for instance, of course you find injunctions in the Bible that specifically condemn divorce. But you also find injunctions in the Bible that say both of you can live apart for a while. So the Bible doesn't say you cannot live apart for a while, especially when somebody's life is involved. So somebody is undergoing violence and the pastor is saying, continue to manage it, God will help you. The day that person is beaten to death, the first person that should be arrested is the pastor. Yes. Because murder is also a sin in the Bible, is it not? And like Jesus Christ said, it is not until you stab somebody to death. By your actions, you can be guilty of murder. By the things you say, you can be guilty of murder. Is that not correct? So what you need to help them do is to let them understand that first, if their major aim is to satisfy religious obligations, especially as people who read the Bible does not say that for your safety you cannot live apart for a while. So if somebody's life is on the line, they can, there's a difference. We established that difference between separation and divorce. What the Bible condemns, even at that, it says you can only divorce on the grounds of fornication or adultery. So it is not even absolute. The Bible does not say that if somebody is trying to kill you, you should stay. God will hold you responsible for suicide. So does the person want to be guilty of suicide? Because this thing is going to take your life and you're deliberately staying in it. So if you have to leave for the man to find help, or whoever the perpetrator is to find help, they should. And their life is more important than societal construct. It is society. If they die, the society will blame them for dying. Do you understand? So, is it that the person is being lied to? Then let them understand that they are being lied to. And then they can make the wise decisions.
Thanks, sir. So my question is, in a situation where in cause of separation, we are both stable. There's no cause for maintenance. I have my money, you have my money, we are okay. Then along the line, one person falters. Do I still owe any financial obligation to you?
It will depend on the circumstance. Are there children involved? If children are not involved and the person was able to make money on his own and they are now separated, if separated, not divorced, you can go back to ask. But if you are divorced, there's a likelihood that you're no longer together. You've moved on, the person has moved on. In that circumstance, it will be difficult. Do you understand? Okay.
Still, still speaking on the separation. Let's say in the separation process, and then or they are separated, and the whole maintenance thing is going on. What if on the line, I be in the process, one person gets married? Does the maintenance still continue?
You know the answer to that question. If they are married, if the person one remarries, automatically the circumstances have entirely changed. But then do they have children together? So if they have children together, the person has an obligation to continue to take care of his or her children. So the fact that you are remarried will not change your obligation towards your children. You continue to provide for them until they attain adulthood. And in some cases, even an adult child can still be entitled to maintenance if they have special needs. So for instance, the child is sick and cannot walk, even if he's 29. But because of illness, cannot walk, then he's still entitled. Okay? I'll come to you. We'll take two more. Or three. So we'll take three more. So, you gave me 3 hours. You have almost taken 3 hours with your questions. So I'll ask for an extension. Go ahead.
Sorry, still on the separation. What if the person carrying out the maintenance, that's person paying, let's say, loses their job?
And they are no longer able to.
Yes.
What happens? What do you think will happen?
I feel like the maintenance should stop because.
It will stop now. Okay. He had money, that is why you were asking for it. Now he no longer has. What will he do? He will simply go back to God and say, well, I'm sorry, I don't have money anymore. I've lost my job. I'm no longer able to pay. Is that not so? So they will review. Especially if children are involved, they will review that situation. So it might be that you were giving 1 naira and you're no longer able to afford 1 naira, you can only give 20 kobo. You will review.
So I want to try and paint a scenario. So according to the Duluth model, sorry, someone asked a question you asked a question if we can do it in Nigeria, and I just want to ask, so in a situation where a very influential man, like he owns his own chain of business, yes, and he's domestically abusing his wife, and the delete model, obviously somebody will intervene, all of that, and in a country like Nigeria where we're corrupt and all of that, how can that happen?
So let me give you an example that answers your question. So we had a situation where a child was molested here in Ogun State, and an NGO got involved and arrested the perpetrator. And the first thing that happened was that the chiefs in that community came to the NGO and said, we want to take over the case. They had influence, they had money, they had authority and all of that. You know what the NGO did? They publicized it. Somebody has molested another person, and the chiefs in that community, they mentioned their names, are trying to sweep the case under the carpet. So a higher authority got involved, and they ran away. Have I said anything? Are you sure I've said anything? Thank you. So I agree with you that there's corruption and this can mitigate effective enforcement procedures. But that is why we also need to be creative. No rich man wants publicity unless it is good. Nobody likes bad publicity. So they would rather stay away because it will give them bad publicity.
So my question is, if the cause of the separation is debt, so the couple they separated based on the man spends a lot and stuff like that, but they have joint accounts. So how do you deal with that? There's a child involved. So how do you deal with that since there's a joint account? Like
One of them has a bad spending habit and is putting the family in debt. That would be and that is the basis of separation. So are you asking if it is possible to separate in that situation or what happens after separation? The account will be separated. Everybody will earn their own money and spend it as they wish.
the debt that is involved, is like involving both parties since it's one account. And so who is going to pay back or how do they settle that part? And the child care maintenance. The guy, like the man, is the one. Yes. Like he just has a bad spending habits and betting, gambling, all those stuff. So yes, yes. It's a joint account, so the woman earns more. So whatever money that comes, that, but like the account, it's not like he's spending all, but like part of it and the bank and stuff like that. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
And say three of us should be able to sign. Either party can withdraw. But I'm the one who opened the account. I can go back and say change the mandate. Me alone to withdraw. Or if it is not working, open a fresh account, stop using that one. So he no longer has access to my money. So if he's indebted, he should go and find a way to pay. Just separate your accounts. You wanted to ask a question?
First, thank you for your presentation. It was very insightful. My question is under the children section, upbringing and education, when we said the information passed along to the kids should be appropriate and constructive, shouldn't be negative and sensitive. Here, it's not a black and white situation here, and slip-ups could occur. The father is in debt for taking care of these children. He's stressed out. The mother too is stressed out. She has reached out to her family members, all of that. So how do we help parents to manage the situation? Because the kids are not blind. They are seeing what is happening. They know what might have caused this. And also, in managing this situation, does it also depend on the age and maturity of the child?
Last statement you made, yes, it does. You don't want to expose young kids to those kind of situations. And yes, I agree with you that slips can occur. Maybe a woman is frustrated or a man is frustrated and they just blurt something they ought not to have said. It happens most times because they are not even aware. Awareness is a problem. You only avoid something that you know you should not do. Do you agree? So the first question is, do they even know that they shouldn't do it? Now when they know, they become conscious of that obligation. It may not entirely take it away, but it limits incidences of parents involving their children in those kind of, or passing negative information about each other to their to their children. So it's not like it's an absolute solution, but it helps. It goes a long way to help them to understand. So, please, I want 3 volunteers. One of the volunteers will be a mediator, and then we'll have a husband and a wife, and they're going to act out this for us. I'm sure I'm going to have volunteers so that I don't have to choose for myself. So, can we have volunteers? Somebody will be Idon. Please, who has the Idon vibes? I'm sure you guys know who has Idon vibes. Tell me. Who? You have Idon vibes? Sorry? You want to be the wife? Please give her a round of applause. And so we have our Kayla, who is going to be our Idon. Let's have Idon now. You want to be Idon? Please give him a round of applause. So who will mediate for us? Can we have a mediator? You will mediate for us. We'll have our mediator. Please give her a round of applause. Yes, please. If we can get 3 chairs. So watch a short movie or drama if you like. So you can come up stage, please. Yes, so I'm going to read out the case. Idon loves to party. He is the life of the party, and everyone at Bezuan knows him. Hope there's no Bezuan in Babcock. Is there Bezuan in Babcock? Are you sure? Not yet. Okay. Most likely there will not be. He has the money to boot, or so it seems. Kayla is a regular at Bezuan and meets Idon there always. They got talking over a cup of beer, and one thing led to another. Kayla slept in Idon's house one night. She took in. She informed Idon, and he let her move in with him. They started living as husband and wife, and they had a boy together. It turns out Idon is violent. Little disagreement gets him into fits of rage. He beats Kayla to a pulp each time they have a quarrel. This happens before Bruno, their child. Kayla is tired and wants a solution. She wants the Duluth model applied at all costs. Do you get the scenario? So as they demonstrate, watch out for the recommendations that you think are best applicable in this situation. Now, so you are the mediator. They have brought their case to you. It's now time for you to resolve their disputes. She is asking for Duluth model at all costs. The Duluth model, getting perpetrators of violence to take responsibility for their actions. So, how would you resolve it? Let's do this in 7 minutes.
Hi, Kila. Hi, Idon. So, I've heard from you. I've heard your complaints, but can you explain it again better?
Okay, thank you. It's not that hard. He used to party. I agree. I also used to party. And then I went there, I saw him. One thing led to another, something happened, and I got pregnant for him. He allowed me to move into his house. I moved into his house. All of a sudden, he started beating me. He started shouting at me. I will cook. He will tell me that there's too much salt in the food. He will beat me. I will cook. He will say that it is peppery. He will beat me. Any small thing, he will beat me. I'm just here because I'm tired. I want him to take responsibility for his actions. It's too much for me. It is getting too much.
Mr. Idol, can I hear from you?
The first thing is you need to ask her, what does she tell me? What does she always say each time I come back from work? Each time I come back from maybe my parties, what does she say? What does she always like doing? What is her mannerism towards me every time? What annoys me? She needs to state her own premise first. Do you just think I just like beating people? Okay, fine. She makes me annoyed all the time. But at first she was sweet and loving, but all of a sudden I don't know what spirit entered her. And now she wants me not to take out my anger on her. Like, who else am I going to take it out on?
Ms. Kayla, so in your exchanging of words, from your side, you say he beats you. From his side, you say you say something that makes him beat you. So, do you know or can you remember anything you have said?
Please, I just have a question. Is it wrong for me to tell him that I don't want him staying out late at night? We have a son. I want him to take responsibility. Is that wrong? Thank you.
So sorry, quick question. In your talking about what happened, last I heard was that he told you to move in, and that was it. Are you both legally married? Okay. So
He has been promising me marriage. Before we gave birth to the boy, he has been promising me marriage.
him promising you marriage, and he hasn't done the marriage yet. You both, in my perspective, are not married. You just have a son together and you are living together, and then he beats you. You have every right to leave, and you want him to take responsibility of his child, which he has brought you into his house, and he does that. But Mr. Idon, hello sir. So you that said she says things that triggers you, like give me a scenario when that happened and what did she say?
Let's start from the beginning. Where did she meet me? Where did she meet me? She met me late at night in a party. And she's complaining I come back late. I don't understand. We met exactly 12 a.m., midnight. And that was when we clicked. And she wants me to stay. She wants me to keep coming in early. I don't even understand. And her mouth is sharp. Can't you see it? Can't you see it? This is what I'm trying to tell you. Her mouth is sharp. She never listens. I'm trying to say something. That's why I always resort to violence. Because she never listens to me. Every time she's always talking. What are we saying? What are we saying? If I start now, it might be like as if I don't have self-control. But
So, sorry, Ms. Kayla, please. So, Mr. Idon, yes, your lifestyle before you met her was party after party. No problem. You both met yourself pattern, but you know you have a responsibility to your child because your child growing up, seeing you pattern, would think that is the life and wouldn't want to listen to his mother. Yes, despite you both are not married, but you have to raise your child right. So, what do you have to say about that? And Miss Kayla, on your own end, yes, he is not listening. He wants to do what he wants to do, but there are different ways and different approaches to things. Because if you go with violence and you already know he's a beater, you are going to meet Goliath with anger. Goliath will bring you down. So, you too, on your own end, you have to take things calmly. Not that you should not do anything, no. You can do something, but not approaching it in a violent way. And Mr. Idon, you too, you have to try to listen. Because you both being violent and your child saying that you being a bit of a woman grows up with the mentality that, oh, it's good to beat women. It's a normal lifestyle. No, that's not it. So you have to listen. You have to approach things differently. So from all I have said, what do you have to say?
Thank you. I've heard all you have to say. Thank you. All I want now is that he will take responsibility for the beatings he used to beat me, and that from today he would make a promise, write an understatement if possible, that from today I would be safe. And if within 2 days of when we get back home, something happens, he beats me, I will pack my things and leave. That's all I want.
Mr. Idonsa.
Is that a solution? You can't tell me that is a solution. She's not even bringing up anything. If she has the mind, she should face me. We're going to meet at home this night. If she has, I've heard all you said, mediator. But if she has the mind, she should face me this night. I'm going to come late, and I want to see what she's going to do.
Okay, I think the best solution here is you both will have to stay apart from yourself for a while. Because then if you stay apart from for a while, who will have responsibility for the child? You both have to have responsibility for your child. So you live in, because okay, let's say people want to have shifts. You go to party in the morning and come back in the night. Who wants to look after the child? She has her own work to do, but she tries her best. So if you both are separated, who looks over the child? Well, okay, because at this point I cannot leave two of you in one house because something is going to happen. Anyhow. So what do you both think? Separation, like staying apart, and watching over your child when you are supposed to, regardless your pattern and all.
It's even my house, self. So if she wants to pack out and go, she should go with Bruno. I don't mind. She should learn how to keep quiet when I'm talking. I'm the owner of this household. In fact, she was the one that came home from that party, and then she took in only one night. Is she the first person I've... You understand what I'm trying to say? She's not the first person. So I don't even... I actually don't understand why she took in one night.
Thank you so much. We would have loved to see the end of this. Unfortunately, we are pressed for time. But do you think they've done well? Please express your appreciation. I enjoyed the fact that both of them were spontaneous and they acted as if they really met at a party and they've been together for some time. That's a nice one. So please, you can go back to your seats. So, what would you say you took away from that role play? Did the mediator identify the issues? Did she do so? Did she? Let's have your responses. Did she? Yeah.
What I would like to say is that she did quite well. She did very well. But an addition to what I feel should be the first thing is that a boundary should be set that you have no right to lay your hand on a woman. Bearing the fact that you are not even married self. Even if you are married, you are not even meant to. But what is happening here, the scene is that they are not married. And you still, like you even raising your hand is the beginning of the issue as a whole. So I feel like that should be the first thing they should say. And the woman mentioned she wanted to use Duluth model. And so when you were explaining, you said it's usually focused on, let's say, women that are faced with violence or any past spouse. Okay, that was how it came. But it has already been spread now to everybody. So like she's a victim of violence and it's because of her spouse or her partner in question raised his hand on her. So I feel like the first thing there should be, Mr. Idon, never again should you raise your hand on. But every other thing was okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Please give her a round of applause. Any other observation? Any other observation? Well, I observed that the mediator informed the woman that she has the right to leave. You're being treated violently, you don't have to stay. That's not something that is commonly advised in our environment. Do you think that was proper?
Well, I felt like with the whole scenario and everything, the child, Bruno, was not considered. Maybe the mediator didn't bring to light that, a child, she didn't really emphasize that a child was involved. Because he's saying that the woman should go if she wants to go. And I don't think she reminded him that, you have a child, though. And obviously, he doesn't seem like someone that is ready to take care of that child. So I felt like maybe the child they should continue emphasizing the fact that there was a child involved. And whatever decision was made, the child should be considered.
Thank you. So you see, this is the takeaway from this role play. It's not likely that you will resolve a dispute of that nature in one sitting. Is it likely? So the mediator would have to, first of all, use the first meeting to identify the issues. And she did. She identified the fact that the main issue is that somebody is violent. And then she tried to find out the cause. Why does it happen? So the second meeting can now be directed towards helping parties to look for solutions. So the woman is insisting on the Duluth model. In other words, I want my husband punished. That's what the Duluth model is basically about. And the mediator, of course, didn't insist that it happens that way. And that's a good thing. So it is not always the case that if a party demands something, you grant them their wish. Because you can easily be accused of bias. So she was trying to dig to identify the root cause of the problem. I'm happy that you paid attention and you understood and you're able to relate this case to the recommendations that we have taught under the family guidelines. It gives me confidence that if you were to deal with these kind of situations after you leave here, you would use the recommendations appropriately. Thank you so much. So please give yourselves a round of applause. So we have the land guidelines to deal with, but I think we shouldn't just sit down and it can be boring for some time. So can we stretch a bit? Can we stretch? Take like 1 or 2 minutes to stretch ourselves, and then we'll quickly deal with the land guidelines before we close for the day. So we can take a minute or two to just stretch. Please, can we all stand up? I know they are sharing drinks and snacks, but let's see if we can do something. Do you know how to do this clap? Atama. You know it. So who can lead us? Somebody should come and lead us now. Somebody, I heard a female voice, very sonorous, said yes. Who was that? Identify yourself now. You're beautiful, so please identify yourself. Success. Who is Success? Who is Success now? Okay. So please come and show us how to do Atama. They know how to do it. Okay, so please. Unaware of what? How about you? You've never heard of Atama? You've not eaten Atama before? Okay, so they don't know what Atama is. She knows it. Please come. I know you know it. Come now. Come and show us how to do Atama.
Atama, 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 Labaku. Atama, 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 Labaku. Okay. Okay, Atama is like Atama is once, then Labak.
She does. You've explained now. Please come. No, don't explain. Come and show them. Well, the idea is the fun in it, you know.
So when she says Atama, you're supposed to clap once, no matter how many times she says it. So if she says Atama 3 times, you're supposed to still clap once. When she changes it to Labato, you now change the clapping to 3 times. Then the last, Labarina, okay. So it's meant to be Atama, 1, Atama, Atama, Labato, Labato, Labarina. You're not continuing.
You will get it. So please, let's do it. I'm sure you will.
Okay. Atama, Atama, Atama. Sorry. Atama, 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 Labato, Labato, Labarina. Okay, one more time. Atama, Atama, Atama.
Okay, so I'll do it now. So the idea is for you to reach a crescendo. You do it as fast as possible. Atama, 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 Labato, Labato, Labarina. Atama, 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 Labato, Labato, Labato. Now please, can you take us back to the land guidelines so we can course through that and then close for the day? Land, the first module, the first guideline. You're going back to the beginning. Thank you. Conflicts, preventing conflict. That's where the first module starts from. No. You're going back. You're going to the beginning. I'm talking about the first module. Preventing, yes, conflict prevention. That is it. Yes. Conflict prevention and registration on conflict prevention, registration and documentation of land. It's easy to say, well, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to resolve land disputes, I do not plan to do this, so I don't see the use or the benefit. But you'll be surprised how important or how effective or beneficial this can be. So somebody used to tell us a story when we were in the law school. He said, it is not everybody who attends law school that ends up practicing as a lawyer. Is that correct? So you might become a lawyer, finish reading law, and then go to work in an insurance company. You might even decide to start your own business and go into agriculture. So it might look at that point like your training was wasted. But is that correct? So in the course of doing that, your farming business, somebody decides to cheat you. What do you think will be the